This is the TEA Employee Misconduct and Abuse Reporting Training. This will be an overview of recent changes in legislature on how to report any abuse and misconduct as defined under Texas law. Types of abuse. So what does abuse actually look like? I'm going to break it down in different types of abuse and neglect you might encounter. Each one has its own definition, but they all fall under the broader umbrella of abuse as defined by Texas law. Physical abuse. Physical abuse is abuse that includes physical injury that causes substantial harm to a child, or even the genuine threat of such harm. But it doesn't stop there. If someone fails to make a reasonable effort to prevent another person from causing physical harm to a child, that too is considered abuse. Sexual abuse. Sexual abuse includes any sexual conduct that harms a child's mental, emotional, or physical welfare. This includes serious criminal offenses like continuous sexual abuse of a young child or disabled individual, indecency with the child, or aggravated sexual assault. Neglect. Neglect happens when someone responsible for a child's care does something or fails to do something that shows a clear disregard for what could happen as a result. In other words, they ignore the risks and the child ends up harmed or put in immediate danger, especially when it comes to their physical health or safety. Here are the most common forms of neglect. Neglectful supervision, leaving a child without proper supervision, which could lead to harm. Physical neglect, not providing basic needs like food, clothing, or a safe place to live. Medical neglect, not getting medical care for a child when it's clearly needed. Abandonment, leaving a child without arranging for their care. Refusal to accept parental responsibility is not taking responsibility for a child who's under your care. Neglect isn't always what someone does, it's often about what they don't do. If a person fails to report abuse or doesn't take responsible steps to stop physical harm, trafficking, or sexual abuse, that's considered neglect too. Failure to act. Failing to report abuse or failing to make reasonable effort to prevent physical injury, human trafficking, or sexual conduct with the child. Trafficking and exploitation. If someone knowingly allows or encourages a child to be trafficked or doesn't take action to stop it, that's abuse under the Texas Penal Code, Chapter 43. This includes sexual exploitation, solicitation or forcing a child into prostitution, filming or photographing a child in an obscene way. Sometimes the harm from abuse is emotional or psychological, and it can be just as serious. Emotional and mental injury. Abuse isn't always physical. It can also be mental or emotional harm that causes real observable problems in a child's development or psychological health. If the child is put in a situation where this kind of harm happens and no one steps in to stop it or report it, that's abuse. Substance abuse is when drugs or controlled substances are involved. The impact on a child can be serious and far-reaching. If someone uses controlled substances in a way that harms a child or encourages or allows a child to use them, that's also abuse. This includes any controlled substances listed under the Health and Safety Code, Chapter 481. The key takeaways here are abuse isn't just about what someone does, it's also about what they failed to do. So, the Senate Bill 571 changes. Senate Bill 571 passed during the 89th legislative session, introduced several key updates to Texas law relating to child abuse and school staff misconduct. The definition of child abuse under the Texas Family Code now includes conduct that harms a student's mental, emotional, or physical welfare, including conduct that constitutes an improper relationship between an educator and a student under Texas Penal Code 21.12. This makes it clear that inappropriate relationships between school staff and students are legally considered abuse. The law also classifies which law enforcement agencies you should report to, including Texas DPS, a municipal police department, a county sheriff's office, or a county constable's office. Code of Conduct. Texas educators follow the Educators Code of Ethics, Chapter 19 in the Texas Administrative Code, which lay out what's expected and what's not okay when working with students. This code outlines the professional standards expected of all certified educators in Texas. These standards help protect students. Boundary violations and inappropriate relationships. Failing to maintain appropriate boundaries, inappropriate communications, and improper relationships with the student. Showing favoritism towards certain students in a way that affects fairness or student well-being. Treatment of a student in a way that negatively affects their learning or mental health. Communication and technology misuse. Violating school or district communication policies, including improper use of messaging apps or social media, using or sharing inappropriate AI-generated images involving students or staff. Safety, substance, and criminal violations include neglect, abuse, or physical harm of a student, making alcohol or drugs available to a student, being under the influence of alcohol or drugs on school property or during school activities, possession of a weapon on school property or during school activities, committing a crime. Ethical and professional misconduct, engaging in fraudulent or deceptive practices of the school system or SBAC. The progress and prevention, a history of Texas child protective laws. Understanding these definitions is essential for school employees because knowing where and how to report is the first step in protecting children. We're walking through how and where to report, including DFPS and administrative channels in an upcoming section. Now that we've covered the legal definitions and recent updates from Senate Bill 571, we're going to take a step back and look at the history of building the framework to prevent this over time. In 2010, Jenna's Law was passed in 2009, was a major turning point. It laid the foundation for how schools approach abuse prevention, training, and reporting, and it's been strengthened through several legislative updates since then. 2011 was focused on recognition and reporting. The law was updated to include other forms of maltreatment and prevention strategies. It also made training on child abuse mandatory for new employees' orientation and encouraged annual training for all school staff. For the first time, child trafficking was officially recognized as a form of abuse. 2013, a statewide training schedule was introduced, required all school employees to be trained starting in the 2014-15 school year. Schools were also required to post a child abuse hotline. That same year, the Rise to the Challenge curriculum was developed to support prevention efforts. 2015, TEA reporting policy and the OOG child sex trafficking team was established. In 2015, the TEA updated its policies to ensure child trafficking and was included in abuse reports. The state also created the child sex trafficking team to lead prevention and response efforts. In 2019, new requirements ensured that human trafficking was included in all school district policies and training. The law also expanded protections for students with significant cognitive disabilities. Superintendents and school board members were also required to receive training on sexual abuse, trafficking, and other forms of maltreatment. In 2020, the Do Not Hire Registry was formed, which is an important safeguard to help protect students. This registry ensures that individuals who may pose a risk to student safety are not employed in Texas public schools. Before hiring any employee or contractor, schools are required by law to check the Do Not Hire Registry. If a person's name appears on this list, they are prohibited from being hired in any capacity. In 2025, Senate Bill 571 reduced the reporting window for suspected abuse or neglect to just 24 hours. It also increased reporting responsibilities for superintendents, principals, and directors. Finally, it expanded the Do Not Hire Registry to cover a broader range of misconduct, including inappropriate communication and boundary violation. Recognizing reportable misconduct. As a school staff member, you are a professional and have an ethical duty to protect students from harmful or inappropriate behavior, whether it comes from colleagues, volunteers, or others in the school environment. This responsibility is bigger than any personal discomfort you might feel about reporting a colleague's behavior or participating in an investigation. So, warning signs in students. These signs indicate that a student is experiencing distress or inappropriate contact. sudden changes in friendship or behavior or attitude, new or increased anxiety or fear, rapid weight loss or rapid weight gain, dressing in any unusually provocative, possibly to appease or avoid attention from a predator, sudden interest in makeup or appearance, visible signs of injury, bruises, inconsistent explanations, withdrawal from family or friends or usual interests, following or messaging school staff on social media, having multiple or secretive social media accounts, or possessing expensive items such as jewelry or clothing, and having unexplained money. Risk indicators in adults. These behaviors may signal boundary violations. Unnecessary or inappropriate contact, gradually building overly personal relationship with students, showing favoritism such as gifts or special privileges, having personal conversations about romantic or sexual topics, using private messaging apps or social media to talk to students outside of school hours or about non-school topics, providing counseling when it is not part of the staff member's role, ignoring school policies that limit contact with students, especially contact that occurs outside of school hours or without explicit parent knowledge or permission, giving students gifts or money without explanation, asking students to keep secrets or hide communication, discouraging students from spending time with peers or trusted adults, creating emotional dependency between the student and the adult. These are community risk indicators. These broader issues can make it harder to identify or report concerns. There's hesitation to believe a student when they speak up, limited access to mental health or social services, or close-knit communities where personal relationships may discourage reporting. The sign in students with cognitive disability. These warning signs specific to students with cognitive disabilities may indicate increased vulnerability or distress, difficulty understanding social cues, boundaries, or danger, increased reliance on others for basic needs, transportation, or decision-making, strong desire for friendship, attention, or acceptance, which may be exploited, limited ability to communicate discomfort, confusion, or abuse, challenges in recognizing or reporting inappropriate behavior or misconduct. Defining appropriate and inappropriate behavior. Creating a safe school environment is a shared responsibility. If you see something that raises concern, even if you're unsure, report it. Your action could make all the difference in a student in need. So we're going to check the understanding of these topics. Friending or commenting or following students on their social media accounts. This is inappropriate behavior. This may cross the boundary of appropriate behavior. This may be perceived as grooming or favoritism. Always make clear professional communication through school-approved channels. Making jokes or having conversations with students that include sexual or suggestive content. Inappropriate behavior. This constitutes inappropriate communications and violates professional standards and can make students feel unsafe or uncomfortable. Meeting or tutoring a student alone behind closed doors. This is inappropriate behavior. This may cross boundaries of appropriate behavior. These actions lack transparency and can lead to misunderstanding or misconduct. Communicating with students only through school-approved platforms. This is appropriate behavior, maintains professional boundaries, and ensures transparency. Giving praise to students in a respectful and inclusive way. Appropriate behavior, encourages positive behavior and supports student development. Following school policies when reporting concerns. Appropriate behavior shows accountability and a commitment to student safety. Behavioral patterns of misconduct. Misconduct by school employees is a serious breach of trust and unfortunately can happen in any school, in any community. So who are our violators and what do we need to do to recognize and prevent this behavior? The truth is that violators are not always who we expect. They can be teachers, coaches, administrators, aides, vendors, contractors, or any other adult in position of authority over students. Often they're well liked, respected, and trusted. That's what makes their behavior hard to detect or even harder to report. These headlines feature some of cases of educator misconduct in the news. Former Judson ISD teacher received 60-year sentence for sexually abusing a first grade student. Arlington principal, school staffers arrested in child grooming case, police say. Former DeSoto ISD substitute teacher arrested for having improper relationship with the student. That was in December of 2024. 3 North Texas educators arrested in ongoing child sexual abuse investigation in Fort Worth. Substitute teacher arrested for allegedly showing Kennedale ISD students explicit content. Here at Pine Tree ISD, we do not want any of our employees in any of these news headlines. So, recognizing the early signs of abuse. Inappropriate staff-student relationships rarely begin with a single obvious act. It often starts with small boundary violations, things that may seem harmless at first but escalate over time. That's why early recognition and intervention are very important. This is a case study of misconduct and consequences in student interaction. A high school PE teacher attempted to remove a freshman student from class after the student threw a ball that accidentally hit the teacher. Believing the student was being disruptive, the teacher escalated the situation by physically chasing the student, knocking him down, and placing hands around the student's neck, causing bodily injury. The incident was captured on video and supported by photo evidence and witness testimony. Following a formal hearing at the State Office of Administrative Hearings, an administrative law judge found that the teacher had acted intentionally, knowingly, and recklessly, violating both the Texas Educator Code of Ethics and SPEC disciplinary rules related to abuse and neglect. SPEC permanently revoked this teacher's certification. Takeaways from this case study: physical force must never be used in anger or retaliation, even if a student is disruptive. Losing control can end a career. Teachers' actions, though possibly triggered by frustration, crossed a clear line into misconduct. Documentation matters, and ethics and professionalism are non-negotiable. Educators are held to a higher standard of conduct, especially with interaction with students. This is another case study on inappropriate physical discipline and its consequences. An elementary school physical ed aide attempted to stop a kindergarten student from leaving the gym. The aide grabbed the hood of the student's jacket, dragged him through the gym doors, chased him down a hallway, and then pinned him against the wall while yelling at him. The administrative law judge found that this aide's actions were unreasonable and violated Texas Educator Code of Ethics and SPEC's rules for abuse and neglect. SPEC revoked the aide certification, and they were placed on the Do Not Hire registry under House Bill 3, permanently barring employment in Texas public schools. Here's another case study on inappropriate physical discipline. The takeaways from this are: physical restraint must be appropriate and lawful, even when safety is a concern. Intent does not excuse misconduct. Even if the goal was to protect the student, the method used was harmful and unacceptable. Video and witness evidence matter, and know your limits. Staff must follow district protocols and seek help when needed rather than taking matters into their own hands. This is an inappropriate communications case. A high school art teacher engaged in inappropriate and unethical communication with a student who had been in a class as a sophomore. Over time, the teacher secretly messaged the student through Facebook and WhatsApp, initiating conversations that included lewd discussions about the student's sexual preferences and activity, comments about the student's appearance, including possibly calling her hot, sending drawings of nude women and asking the student to pose nude, inviting the student on a joyride. The student later testified that these interactions made her feel sexualized and used. When the school became aware of the situation, the teacher admitted to the conduct. He was immediately terminated, and the matter was referred to law enforcement. An administrative law judge found that the teacher's actions violated Texas Educators Code of Conduct and Ethics and SPEC disciplinary rules. The findings were supported by witnesses and investigator testimony. SPEC permanently revoked this teacher's certification. Teacher was added to the Do Not Hire registry, permanently barring employment in Texas public schools. Takeaways from this: boundaries with students must be clear and professional. Any personal, romantic, or sexual communication with students is strictly prohibited. Digital communication is not private. Messages sent through social media or apps can and will be used as evidence. Abuse of authority is a serious violation. Educators hold a position of trust and power. Exploiting that trust for personal and inappropriate reasons is grounds for permanent removal from the profession. Students must feel safe. Misconduct by the numbers. This graph is showing the number of educators that have been placed on the Do Not Hire registry as of June the 1st of 2025. The number placed on the registry is 3,827. Your duty to report what, when, and how. As school employees, we are often the first line of defense in protecting students from harm. That is why it's so important to understand what we do, what not to do, and when you suspect abuse, neglect, or misconduct. In Texas, the law is clear. Educators are empowered and protected when they report concerns in good faith. That means if you report with honest concern, you are shielded from legal consequences. As of the 89th Texas legislative session, there's an important update you need to know. Under this new Texas law, now in effect, the time frame for reporting suspected abuse or misconduct has been shortened. Previously, school professionals had up to 48 hours to make a report. Now that window has been reduced to just 24 hours. This change highlights the importance of timely reporting, as educators and school staff staying informed and in full compliance with these updated requirements is essential in protecting students. As a school employee, you have both the right and responsibility to report suspected child abuse or neglect without fear, intimidation, or regret. There's mandatory reporting. When you suspect abuse, neglect, or misconduct, reporting, it is not just the right thing to do, it's the law. If you believe a child is in immediate danger or needs urgent help, always call the Texas Abuse Hotline. Do not use the online reporting system in emergencies. The phone line is staffed 24/7 and allows for a faster response when time is critical. For non-urgent concerns, you can use the secure online reporting system at txabusehotline.org. The report details when making a report, whether by phone or online, be as thorough and descriptive as possible. Include specific details about what you saw, heard, or were told. The more information you provide, the better equipped the FPS is to assess the situation and determine whether an investigation is needed. Legal protection. Your report is immune from civil or criminal liability as long as the report is made in good faith and without malice. Personal duty. It's also important to know that you may not delegate this duty to anyone else. If you suspect abuse or neglect, you must report it yourself, not defer it to your supervisor or colleague. If you request confidentiality, the Department of Family and Protective Services cannot reveal your identity to the child's parents, alleged perpetrators, or others unless you give consent or a court orders it. However, DFPS may share your identity with law enforcement. The new disclosure is due to recent changes under SB 571. The law now allows information on the identity of a person who reports suspected child abuse or neglect to be shared with the TEA or the State Board for Educator Certification, SBEC, if they request it for specific official purposes. This includes investigating the report itself, determining whether someone failed to report suspected abuse, or reviewing how investigators were handled. When reporting suspected abuse, human trafficking, or misconduct, follow the procedures outlined below to ensure the appropriate course of action. In an emergency, call 911 immediately. For non-emergencies, follow the law and report to Department of Family and Protective Services and or law enforcement. Contact DFPS by phone or for urgent situations or online at txabusehotline.org. If you suspect human trafficking, report it to both the FPS and law enforcement. Reminders for school employees. As educators, we are entrusted with a powerful responsibility to speak up when a child may be in danger. We report not just because it's the law, but because every voice matters. Your action could be the turning point in a child's life. Requirements to report employer misconduct. Let's take a closer look at what the law says about reporting misconduct. Under Texas Education Code 22A.051 and 22A.052, superintendents and principals have a legal duty to report certain types of employer or educator misconduct to TEA or SBEC within 48 hours of becoming aware of it. This includes misconduct such as physical mistreatment or threats of violence toward a student or a minor, inappropriate communications or failure to maintain professional boundaries, soliciting or engaging in romantic or sexual relationship with a student or minor. If a principal becomes aware of misconduct, they must notify the superintendent within 48 hours. Then the superintendent must report it to TEA or SBEC within 48 hours. Failing to report isn't just a policy violation, it is a state jail felony if the failure was intentional and meant to conceal someone's criminal history or misconduct. State jail penalties include confinement in a state jail for 180 days to 2 years and a fine of up to $10,000. What to expect after you make a report. When you report abuse or neglect to the Department of Family and Protective Services, your report goes through statewide intake, which is managed by the Texas Abuse Hotline. This is the main channel for most reports, whether you call or submit online. Once your report is submitted, you'll receive a report identification number. This number is used by DFPS to track your report. If you report online, you'll first get a system-generated report identification number to let you know your submission was received. After an intake specialist reviews and completes the report, you'll get the official report identification number by email. If you report by phone, the intake specialist should explain the outcome of the call before it ends. They'll let you know whether the report is being forwarded to a local DFPS office. Keep in mind that they won't be able to share details about what actions the local office will take. No matter how you report, online or by phone, you'll get a notification letter once the case is closed. This letter confirms that DFPS reviewed the report, but it won't include any detailed findings or outcomes. Texas law requires every public school system to have clear policies and procedures in place for preventing and reporting child abuse, sexual abuse, human trafficking, and other forms of maltreatment. These policies are designed to protect students and make sure you know how to recognize and respond when something is wrong. Parental notice. Under TEC 22A.053, school boards and governing bodies must now adopt a policy that ensures parents or guardians are notified in writing if an employer or service provider is alleged to have engaged in certain types of misconduct involving the student. Additionally, SB 12, updated 26.008A2, requiring school districts to notify a parent within one school business day after the date a school employee first suspects that a criminal offense has been committed against their student. This requirement is about transparency and trust. Parents deserve to know when their child may have been affected and what steps the school has taken. It also holds schools accountable for timely, appropriate communication, especially when student safety is at stake. Parent notification requirements. Misconduct, number 2 is fired, or number 3 is report. Important exception. School personnel are not required to notify a parent or guardian if that individual is suspected of being the perpetrator of the abuse, neglect, trafficking, or maltreatment. This exception is in place to protect the student and prevent further risk or harm that could result from this disclosure. Training requirements to help students save. Texas law requires all school staff to receive training on recognizing and responding to child maltreatment. These trainings equip personnel to spot signs of abuse, support students, and take appropriate action. Use the tabs below to review these legal requirements. School staff. According to TEC 38.0041, all school employees must be trained to recognize the factors of abuse, spot warning signs that a child may be a victim, follow internal procedures to support at-risk students, use strategies to reduce a child's risk or abuse or exploitation, and connect students, staff, and families with community resources. Training requirements to provide to all new employees during orientation is given to current employees who haven't yet received it and documented by the school or district to show compliance. Superintendent. Since September 1st, 2019, anyone renewing a superintendent certification on or after January 1st, 2021 must complete at least 2.5 hours of training every 5 years. This training must cover how to identify and report potential victims of sexual abuse, human trafficking, and other forms of child maltreatment. The school board under TAC 1961.1, school board members must complete continuing education on identifying and reporting child maltreatment. Required campus signage. So under this TEC 38.0042, every school campus must post a sign in at least one high traffic area like hallways, near water fountains, cafeterias, gyms, or counselor's office that include the Texas Abuse Hotline, instructions call 911 in case of emergency, the website. The sign must be posted at student eye level in both English and Spanish. Here's what the sign looks like. It's okay to tell, and the information. SHAC committees, which is a Student Health Advisory Committee. Schools are required to adopt and implement policies concerning sexual abuse, trafficking, and other maltreatment of children. Schools are required to ensure SHAC gives recommendations for the appropriate grade level and instruction regarding child abuse, family violence, dating violence, and sex trafficking awareness curriculum, and the parental rights and consent requirements are followed. Legal and ethical consequences when misconduct is committed or ignored. Failing to report suspected abuse can have serious consequences both legally and ethically. It may result in criminal charges, loss of licensure, or civil liability. More importantly, it could mean a child remains in harm's way. Effective September 1st, 2025, HB 4623 removes governmental immunity for school districts and professional employees in cases involving sexual misconduct. This means that if a school employee engaged in sexual misconduct, or if another employee fails to take appropriate action to prevent or report it, both the individual and the district may be held civilly liable. If the victim or their family wins the case, they can receive up to $500,000 in damages from each person harmed. For each person harmed, victims and families can also have their court costs and attorney fees paid for. These are consequences of employee misconduct: certification restrictions, reprimands, suspension of their certification, revocation of their certification, additional conditions. SBEC may impose other conditions or restrictions on an educator's certificate as necessary to protect student safety or uphold professional standards, or administrative penalties ranging from $500 to $10,000. The Do Not Hire registry is in place. There's a requirement for the superintendent or principal to submit reports and criminal penalties for failure to report misconduct. How TEA investigates. TEA investigates reports of misconduct involving educators and school staff through a clear step-by-step process that is guided by the law. The investigations are designed to protect students, hold educators to high professional standards, and make sure everyone involved is treated fairly. This process follows rules set by SBEC and the Commissioner of Education in the Do Not Hire registry. TEA's investigation process. There's an intake process, which TEA's Educator Investigation Division receives information from criminal history reports, Department of Family and Protective Services, public complaints, or reports from school districts or charter schools. Preliminary review process. TEA staff member conducts preliminary review to decide if a formal investigation is needed. This includes verifying the person's identity and job status, reviewing findings from DFPS and law enforcement, gathering basic facts, and coordinating with other agencies as needed. Then there's a formal investigation completed. During the formal investigation, an investigation warning is placed on the educator's certification, and the person may be listed on the Do Not Hire registry temporarily. Case resolution is after the investigation. TEA may close the case and remove the warning, enter into an agreement with the educator to accept the recommended sanction for their conduct, refer the case to Law and Policy Division for legal action. Litigation. If a case is referred for legal action, a TEA attorney will review the case and may file it with the State Office of Administrative Hearings. A hearing may be held where both sides present their case, and an SOAH judge makes a recommendation based on the evidence. Final decision for educator certificate holders is made by SBEC at a public meeting, and the final decision for non-certified employees is made by the Commissioner of Education or the Commissioner's designee. You are not alone in this work. You are part of a statewide community of educators, professionals, law enforcement, and protective agencies committed to protecting students and upholding the highest standards of care. Remember, trust your instinct. If something feels wrong, it's worth reporting. Follow the law. Reporting is not just a moral obligation, it's a legal one, and your voice matters. Thank you for your unwavering commitment to student safety. By staying informed, taking action, and modeling integrity, you are helping to build a future where every student feels seen, heard, and protected. Let's lead with courage, act with integrity, and protect with heart.